We are going to have a TED-style talk on the journey to scale and expansion. And remember, that is pretty much part of the theme of the annual Scale Up Entrepreneurship Summit of Endeavor, Nigeria. So, please, a warm welcome to Ifeoluwa Orioke, who is the Chief Commercial Officer for Flutterwave. One round of applause.
Good morning. Okay, can everybody hear me? Good morning, everybody. My name is Ife. I think first of all, let me say how thoroughly I enjoyed the session before. Great job that Anu and Tosin are doing. I don't think I wanted it to end, either because I didn't want to speak, but because there was a lot of amazing nuggets in there. And thank you to Mr. Balogun as well. It reminded me of the privilege that we actually do have of being part of this network. That I'm able to, because it sounded like a conversation I'd had with Mr. Balogun 10 times. And so it was interesting to hear other people's answers. But the fact that we can have those conversations, and share knowledge and get guidance for what we're trying to do. So thank you very much, sir. I think these guys have shared everything that there is to share, to be honest. I'm supposed to be speaking about the journey to scale and expansion. Most of my friends think I am at least 60 years old. I myself believe I'm a good 54, not 60 yet. And I say that because I start with a time-old adage. And it's very ironic for tech and innovation because that adage is slow but steady wins the race. But in tech, everything is rapid. Innovation itself is rapid. Discussion with government, policy is slow. Technology is fast. I imagine that if I said that in the office or with my team, I'd probably get kicked off the Zoom because we don't do anything slow. But if I'm to tell our journey, I think it's been one of very slow, although it looks super fast, but very slow and steady growth. So yesterday night, I figured out what I was going to say today. I had my talking points. I had never Googled the word or searched or defined the word scale. And then I did yesterday, and it said the right size to solve the problem. I'd never seen it before. I never thought about it because even on this, the previous session, I think the word scale was used at least 10 times. And it's something that we all say, at least in tech. But I read it and I thought about it. I said, the right size to solve the problem. And then I suddenly felt very unqualified to have this conversation. Because at Flutterwave, 6 years in, we haven't solved the problem. We seem to be a very large fintech, but I don't believe that we are yet the right size to solve the problem because the problem still very much exists. And so I ripped apart the talking points. Instead, I'm going to just tell you 3 stories about our journey and hopefully touch on 3 things that other companies, startups, visionaries can pick up as pointers for their own journey. This is our journey. It's by no means what other people should do or an approach that they should take, but perhaps there is something in there for everybody. Before I tell the first story, let's just get it out of the way. The chicken and egg with growth and this thing called scale and expansion. The chicken and egg is money, it's capital. Capital and growth go hand in hand. To get capital, you need to demonstrate growth. To grow, you need to get capital. What do you do, right? And there are 3 very quick things on capital, because I just want to get that out of the way. And those 3 things would be, I think, the role that capital actually plays, how you measure growth for you as a company, and how you validate that growth as a company. Like I said earlier, capital and growth go hand in hand. So you need the money. But I think tech startups have a unique advantage in that growth really means anything. People have scored valuations on, having 1 million customers. Some people have scaled and had 10 customers and had no EBIT or negative EBITDA, and they've gotten huge valuations. So when you think of, the tech space, growth really is anything. It's the number of customers, it's your profit, it's your technology, it's who you acquired, who you did not acquire. In the case of these guys, it's the informal sector, something that is not even measured or measurable on the continent. Then the next thing is how you validate that growth, which is where, again, investors come in. What are they interested in? I remember when we were doing Series A, there were metrics that we were asked for, and they didn't even make sense. Because it was like, come to Africa, what are you talking about? Like, we don't have a database where you just plug in numbers and these things just pop up. But the reality is, in order to scale, you have to be able to validate that growth. External people have to be able to validate that growth. Now, obviously, it's depending on you and what that growth is. So to our first story of growth, it's partnerships and the role that partnerships has played in our own journey. We started 6 years ago, and we had a very small payments company in Nigeria act as our primary customer to essentially test out our technology. We were very fortunate, but it wasn't at the scale that we wanted. We wanted to raise some money. We wanted to grow. And so we found out that there was an opportunity in San Francisco. We got on a plane, and we went to San Francisco to have a conversation with Uber. And I remember sitting in that room and thinking, chances are these people think we're mad, because what have you done to come to this room and have a conversation? But that is where partnership is very interesting. And I don't refer to Uber as our customer, because they shared a value that we shared. They understood the market complexities in the way that we did, and they were very, very desperate to solve a problem. And the reason I talk about that partnership is because on our scale journey, Uber has played a critical role. So we partnered with Uber in Nigeria, and we started to serve them. And today, we have moved from Nigeria to Ghana, to Kenya, to South Africa, to Egypt. I'll tell you a story about our Europe expansion with Uber. And it's interesting that an African fintech is going to service Uber in Europe, where there are other companies. I just realized when I said I was going to tell you that I can't tell you for confidentiality reasons. But it's interesting because it's a partnership. Right before our Series D, C or D, C, we launched Uber Cash with Uber. And what that did for them was create additional rides for them, which expanded their business. And so what Uber has done in each of the markets that I mentioned outside of Nigeria is kick out who they were working with. So if you have the right partner, that journey to scale can be easy. We entered the Kenyan market not because we were very desperate to go, but we had a customer who wanted to go to Kenya. And so we got on a plane and went to figure out what that's going to look like. Second story, I think the first one is a good story. The second one is a bad story, and that is collaboration, the role that collaboration plays in this journey to expansion. And this collaboration I'm talking about is really about your critical stakeholders. In Africa, I think one thing that every entrepreneur or visionary should be aware of is government is one of your most critical, if not your most critical, stakeholder. And that's because we are an evolving market and things can change overnight with one policy, with one pronunciation. There are many things that people are probably thinking as I'm talking about this, because there are publicly available stories and tales of our journey in this expansion and in this situation. But I remember that in January of 2020, I was in Ghana. No, February, I was in Ghana. I picked up my phone, I called Mr. Balogun. The day before, earlier in that day, Mr. Peterside had sent a call, had put a call forward to GB as well. And that was because they were trying to help us understand this stakeholder understand the need for collaboration, and being able to sit down. And so now within our system, we have, I think, a team of about 20-something people and growing that are devoted to understanding collaboration with this stakeholder. It is important that we are able to carry or drag stakeholders, that is, regulators and governments, along. Because, like I said, they can make or mar you. I think African regulators have been really good in that there's a casual, let's wait and see what happens with these people. And in that wait and see stance, it's a great opportunity to go, to knock on the door and say, hey, what's going on? Here's what we're thinking. Here's how we can relate it to what you are familiar with. We spend so much time and effort in doing workshops, right? I'll say this, no matter how great your team, you can still run into problems. Reality check. And so you cannot overemphasize, or I cannot overemphasize, this particular story in our journey. We're 6 years in. I think we are very clearly still learning what it means to collaborate with government and stakeholders. But I think the continent, the regulator, provides a very unique opportunity for us. I think that better than the Western markets, we have a chance to really craft what it is that it looks like for us. We were at a meeting yesterday, and we were challenging the idea that rules that apply in the West should apply to us. A simple example, success rates for cards can be determined by banks and are determined by banks. But if I said to you, somebody called you, or you called somebody in the US or in Spain, and you said, buy me food, it's logical to you that that can happen. That somebody sent you a message while you were away and said, oh, I need to order pizza, send me money for pizza. But if I was having this conversation in Maryland or in DC, it doesn't make sense to anybody that somebody in a different country would ask somebody in another country to buy them food in real time. And because of those kind of use cases, simple things like success rates get hampered. But that in itself is an opportunity for us to engage our guys so that they can engage at the levels that are most important. The last story, I would say, is the best story. And I think Anu and Tosin touched on it, which is people. I will talk about people in two ways. We started as 4 people. In the 5th roundabout, that is now, I think it's, I'm not sure, Igwefon, Ikate something. That's where we started, 4 people. We moved to Lekki, and we became 12 people, and then we became about 47 people. And then in about 2.5 months, we became 130 people. And the truth is, we didn't recognize ourselves and we didn't know ourselves anymore. There were investment bankers like myself. There were bankers like GB. There were millennials. There were Gen Zs. Let's not even talk about Gen Zs. There were all kinds of people from all kinds of places with all kinds of ideas. And our culture became like mashed potatoes. We didn't really know what we were doing anymore. We didn't understand ourselves. And so we set on a quest to change what we look like. We were in multiple locations. And so I think for a week, we all worked together, and we did no work at all. So if your payments failed in that week, we apologize. It was a long time ago. It was 2018. And we tried to build or understand what our culture was. That was when we defined our vision together, not a group of founders just saying this is what our vision is or these are our core values. And then 130 people, we woke up and it was 300 people. And then 300 people woke up and there was COVID. And no, we were 200 and then there was COVID and we became 400 people. And about 2 months ago, we became 700 people. And this is adding the concept of jackpot to it as well, right? Because I don't know how many, I think we're going to create a Flutterwave Canada soon. I think we're going to create a Flutterwave Netherlands. Because people are so critical. People are so critical to your business. The older they are, for me, and I don't mean necessarily by age, but in the system, the better. Because that is money that you don't have to spend to train somebody else to scale to the level that you are in. But like Anu said, it's costly to think that you're going to maintain people. You're not going to pay somebody Naira and then Canada, you're not going to do those things, right? But people continue to be the most important thing that we have. In March of this year, for the first time, we met everybody in the company. We weren't 700 yet, we were still about 500. We all went to Ghana to sort of figure out what this scale thing was. I think that is the one place that I've actually seen the scale, because I was scared when I walked into the room and I saw 500 people who, in most cases, are the breadwinners in their families. And let's average that to 2 per family or 3 per family. That's 1,500 people. That's 1,500 people who are touching other lives. That's over 1 million merchants who employ possibly 2 other people. And the sheer size of what I was looking at, I genuinely broke out. I think "froke" is a word. I genuinely broke out because the little dream that we had that started in Lekki with 4 people was now this ginormous thing in front of us. We continue to learn how to work with people. We continue to think around retention innovation. How do we keep our best assets? Within a system that is constrained by many things, we can't endlessly increase remuneration to match FX volatility. We can't sustain having 700 people in a different country or on a different continent, where most of our revenue is coming from here. But the people story is one that we're passionate about. People both in terms of the guys that are in Flutterwave and people in terms of the customers that we do serve. There is a need, and I think in thinking about scale and expansion, and I think Anu and Tosin touched on it as well, the future of this continent is going to be solved by the people of this continent. The problem of this continent is going to be solved by the right size of solutions for this continent. At Flutterwave, we value people. We value our journey. We're very happy with our journey. We have learned a tremendous lot about ourselves, about our market, about our investors, about our regulators and stakeholders. And we continue to seek opportunities to invest. 200 new people, some of them will definitely japa, but the hope is that we can build those people for the next 5 to 10 years, and they become critical assets, not only for Flutterwave, but for the country. More than 12 other startups have come out of Flutterwave people. And I hope that on this journey to scale and expansion, the next time I'm telling you this story, I can maybe be more qualified or believe a bit more that we are the right size to solve the problem. I don't think we are there yet, but I hope that with my little stories, I've shared something useful with you guys today. Thank you.
Ifeoluwa, we actually have a question that came in while you were speaking.
A question?
Yes.
Tosin told me that there were no
the question
questions.
was, how patient should an entrepreneur be when it comes to scaling? How patient before taking that next step to scale?
How patient should an entrepreneur be? I know Antos is still in the room. I don't know the answer. Tosin said a few things. Anu said something that was very critical, which is trying to do this thing and still remain yourself and remain human and without the frustrations. Even on your best day, and you decide that I was coming here, and the car in front of me just decided that today was the day that they were going to be who they were going to be. And sometimes you're not patient. I don't want to stand here and suggest that, we have it figured out. People frustrate you. The environment frustrates you. Your business frustrates you. Your vision frustrates you. Your own systems frustrate you. Your partners frustrate you. I think it goes back to understanding what growth is. What is growth to you? What is your own vision for growth? And I think that tells you how patient you need to be. In our case, we are able to serve customers in 33 African countries. Whether we like it or not, we're learning patience. It's one of the things that, like I said, we've learned about ourselves. We've learned that there's only so much that is within our control, and you're better able to move the needle by focusing on your partners, your stakeholders, and your own people. I think the patience hopefully comes to you, and if it doesn't, don't beat yourself up for it. That's my answer.
Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Excellent talk there from Ifeoluwa.